Hey guys, what's up? It's John with Educated Arms. Today we are going to be talking about HR 1808. This is the assault weapons ban of 2022. Welcome back, guys. So today we're going to be talking about HR 1808. This is the assault weapons ban of 2022, and I think it's super important before we dive into the text of this to kind of read the very first line of this text to you guys, because I think this sets the tone for the rest of this bill, and I think that it lets you guys know the mindset of the individuals who wrote it, co-sponsored it, and even voted on it. So the very first line of this bill basically says, and this is kind of the goal of the bill, to regulate assault weapons, to ensure that the right to keep and bear arms is not unlimited, and for other purposes. So right out the gates, these guys are letting you know that their goal with this is to infringe upon your Second Amendment rights and to take those rights away from you guys. So it's important to note that where this bill stands currently is that it passed the House of Representatives on Friday, as most of you guys have heard. It obviously still has to go to the Senate and be voted on in the Senate. Now, in the Senate, if they vote on it in the format that it's in and they approve it, then it's got to go to Brandon's desk for him to sign on it. If the Senate proposes any changes to it and makes any changes to it, then it's got to go back to the House, and it can do a little bit of tennis match back and forth before they finalize the final text of the bill. I'm not here to speculate on whether they'll get it passed, whether they won't get it passed. I just want to provide you guys kind of with the information so you know what's coming next and kind of where we go at that. The other thing that's important to note is that let's assume that this does get passed and Brandon signs it, that once it's signed into law, you've got 90 days before everything that we're about to go over essentially goes into effect. So you do have a buffer window. I would highly encourage you, though, if there's any of these things that we're talking about today that you're looking for, I would encourage you to go ahead and start shopping, because the panic buying, my guess, has probably already started. I know on our end we're seeing it at distribution levels, and I can only assume that it's going to continue to get worse. So diving into this thing to start out, I want to kind of break down what they're defining here in this bill, right? And so they are defining essentially everything in this thing as a semi-automatic assault weapon. That's essentially the term that they are using to cover this bill. And a semi-automatic assault weapon is not just your rifles. So they are covering rifles, handguns, and shotguns in this bill. What we're going to do right now is we're going to just kind of break down each of these three categories and what defines a semi-automatic assault weapon, and then we'll kind of go from there. So a semi-automatic assault weapon in the rifle front is going to be a semi-automatic rifle that has the capacity to accept a detachable magazine, essentially, or a detachable ammunition feeding device, and has any one of the following. So if it's semi-automatic and you've got a magazine for it, and it has a pistol grip, a forward grip, a folding, telescoping, or detachable stock, or a stock that is otherwise foldable or adjustable in a manner that operates to reduce the length, size, or any other dimensions. If it's got a grenade launcher on it, a barrel shroud on it, and we'll define a barrel shroud for you guys in a little bit, but essentially that's going to fall under kind of like a handguard, or it has a threaded barrel, it is banned. So this is going to essentially ban pretty much every semi-automatic rifle that's on the market today. There are an exceptionally small number that are going to be exempt from that. The semi-automatic pistol portion of it is essentially going to be a semi-automatic pistol that has that same criteria as the rifle. So if it accepts a detachable magazine and has any one of these other following criteria, it too will be banned under this assault weapons ban. So if it's got a threaded barrel, if it's got a second pistol grip, if it has a barrel shroud, if it's got the capacity to accept a detachable ammunition feeding device at some location outside of the pistol grip, if it's a semi-automatic version of a fully automatic firearm, and then here's the big one that was kind of slipped in on here. If it has a manufactured weight of 50 ounces or more when unloaded. So that's going to even cover your Desert Eagles. That's going to cover any of your AK pistols, your CZ Scorpions, your AR pistols, the SIG MCKs, essentially anything that you would think that has maybe evolved the word pistol, if you will, is going to fall under that 50 ounce or more when it's unloaded. The other important part on here is that if it's got a buffer tube, a stabilizing brace, or a similar component that protrudes horizontally behind the pistol grip, that's going to encompass it under that. So essentially, we've got pretty much every modern sporting rifle out there is going to be banned under this. And then you're going to have the vast majority of larger semi-automatic pistols, like we just talked about, your AKs, your Scorpions, your AR pistols. And then also any of your heavier semi-automatic handguns are going to be banned under this, as well as any of your semi-automatic handguns that have a threaded barrel or anything else that we just went over, a secondary pistol grip, a barrel shroud, all of that. So in addition to the pistols that we've talked about and the rifles that we've talked about that are going to be banned, there's also a vast number of shotguns that are going to fall under this ban as well. Essentially, any semi-automatic shotgun that has the capacity, is what they put in the bill, but it should be the capability to accept a detachable ammunition feeding device or a fixed ammunition feeding device that has the capacity to accept more than 5 rounds and has, again, any one of the following. So essentially, if it checks any one of these boxes on this list that we're about to go over, it too is going to be banned under this. If it's got a folding, telescoping, or detachable stock, if it has a pistol grip or a bird's head grip, so that's your Mossberg Shockwaves, and your TAC 13s, TAC 14s, if it has a forward grip, if it has a grenade launcher on it, they're really obsessed with these grenade launchers, any shotgun with a revolving cylinder. So that's going to cover your Kel-Tec KSGs, the new one that Smith & Wesson's got out, the DP12s, any of those larger capacity shotguns that have been on the market for a while that have got the rotating, feed tubes. Those are all going to be banned under this guy. And then the bill kind of dives into just a vast number of terms, right? So this bill is over 100 pages long, and the majority of this bill is either firearms that are exempt from this ruling, or firearms that are included in it that they felt like they wanted to single out on here. It is important to note that any of these guns that you currently have in your possession, 90 days from this being signed into law, are going to be grandfathered in. So you are safe on that aspect of it, of being able to have these guys possess them now. But the future transfer of them, which we'll go over a little bit later in the video, is going to be kind of a murky water area as well. The other big part of this bill that I feel like has been kind of skipped over a lot is that it also contains a magazine ban. Any magazine that is basically greater than 15 rounds is going to be banned as well on every platform, whether it's a semi-automatic handgun magazine, whether it's your ARs or your AKs. If it holds more than 15 rounds, it is going to be banned under the text of this bill that we've got here. Now, everything that we've gone over, of course, doesn't apply if you're a law enforcement officer. So if you are a current law enforcement officer or a retired law enforcement officer, federal, state, local, all that stuff, and you're in good standing, none of this stuff applies to you. So the government's okay with you guys having them, just not okay with their citizenry having them. Now, going on to the private party transfers a little bit more, essentially the way that private party transfers will work is, again, you've got 90 days from the date that this is signed by the president before everything kind of goes into effect. But the way that a private party transfer is, let's say that you've got an AR that you'd like to sell to your neighbor down the street. At that point, you have got to take that firearm, and your neighbor and you have got to go into an FFL, and essentially that gun has got to be logged into their incoming portion of their logs. You've got to do a complete background check on that individual, and then it's got to be logged out. And that FFL has essentially got to maintain a registry of when that gun came in, who brought it in, all of that information, when it went out, and who bought it, and all of that information as well. And so it further, creates a gun registry, if you will, of all the transactions and transfers of these private party transfers. The other thing that this is going to do that's in this bill that really won't apply to us from a civilian standpoint is that all future magazines that are created during this ban will have to be serialized and date coded. And the same thing with firearms. Any firearms that are created during this ban not only have to be serialized, but they also have to have a date code on them, basically reflecting when and where and how they were manufactured. It's also important to note that all of these manufacturers that are currently manufacturing these things, especially any of the smaller or moderately sized ones who don't supply just a vast number of firearms to the government, let's talk Aero Precision and Sons of Liberty Gunworks and these guys, it's going to put companies like this out of business because the only people that will be able to manufacture these larger capacity magazines that they're calling them and any of these firearms that fall into this criteria are going to be the companies that are selling them to the government. And companies that are smaller or more moderately sized, that the vast number of their clientele base is the civilian market, these guys are going to go under. And this is going to put a huge number of people out of work, out of jobs here in the U.S., probably tens of thousands of individuals. So we're going to put a couple of links in the description of this video. One of them is going to be a link to the complete text of the bill. I encourage you guys to read through specifically the firearms that are exempted on it, which is going to primarily be hunting rifles and hunting shotguns, that kind of things, and read the firearms that are specifically singled out, like the CC Scorpions and essentially every AK variant on the planet, every AR-15 and every AR-10 variant on the planet. Look through those lists. So we'll have a link to that in here. And then the other link that we're going to have is a link to basically reach out to your senators. It's going to be extremely important and essential for you guys to reach out to your senators on the federal level, let them know where you stand on this bill, and encourage them to basically shoot this thing down in the Senate before it ever reaches Brandon's desk and imposes upon your Second Amendment rights. I want to thank everybody for their support, and I want to encourage you guys to share this video with your friends and family. Make sure we get the word out as to where this bill is at and what it's going to do. And if you like this, give us a follow on all the socials, @EducatedArms on pretty much everything. Subscribe to us here on the YouTube channel. And until next time, guys, stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.